Welcome as we review the Latin American revolutions. You need to be aware that Latin America is made up of 4 regions: Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, or also known as the West Indies. Spain colonized most of Latin America, France a number of islands in the West Indies, most notably Haiti, while Portugal colonized Brazil. Great Britain also colonized a number of small islands in the West Indies, most notably Jamaica. As the 1700s were coming to a close, Spain was no longer a strong power. It was having difficulty maintaining its hold over its colonial empire, and as Napoleon was beginning his adventures in Europe, Spain's attention was focused mostly on Europe. Latin American colonies had a very strict social structure. Your status was determined by your parentage. At the top of the pyramid were the peninsulares, those who had actually been born in Spain. They dominated politically, socially, and economically. Next on the social ladder were the Creoles, persons whose ancestors were from Europe, but who had been born in the New World themselves. They certainly resented their second-class status. Mestizos, a mixture of European and Native American descent, and mulattoes, people of African and European descent, were the next 2 major groups. Creoles resent the peninsulares' power and wealth, and see the ideas and the successes of the revolutions in America and in France. When Napoleon conquered Spain, the Creoles saw this as the opportunity to try for their own independence. The first major revolution in Latin America is in the Caribbean in the French colony of Haiti. The name to remember in the Haitian Revolution is Toussaint Louverture. Toussaint Louverture was a former slave who led an uprising of some 100,000 slaves seeking both their freedom and independence. Toussaint Louverture had been a slave but was granted his freedom in 1777 and was educated by his former master as well. Louverture freed the slaves of Haiti and raised an army to take on the French. Thinking that he was meeting with the French to negotiate, he instead was deceived, was arrested, and then dies in a French prison. Haiti does achieve its independence, and Toussaint Louverture is given credit as not only the founder, but the spiritual guiding light for this independence movement. Toussaint Louverture's successes were impressive. He defeated the armies of 3 of the major powers in Europe, Spain, France, and Britain, was able to abolish slavery in Haiti, and won its independence. The next Latin American revolutionary we need to be familiar with is Father Miguel Hidalgo, who led mestizos and Native Americans in a revolution against Spain. Ultimately, that uprising was defeated, but again it began the process of an independence movement. Although Father Hidalgo was captured and executed, he did begin the independence movement. As a result, the war ended the enslavement and the exploitation of the native peoples. The next Latin American revolutionary we need to be familiar with is Simon Bolivar. He was a wealthy Creole in what is today Venezuela, educated in Europe where he was exposed to the ideas of the Enlightenment. And as we said earlier, many of the Creoles resented the privileged position of the peninsulares. Simon Bolivar was encouraged by the revolutions in the United States and in France, and his dream was to create a united South America much like the United States. In the end, Simon Bolivar's dream to establish a united South America was not realized. However, by 1821, he had liberated Venezuela, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. Next up is Prince Dom Pedro from Brazil. Brazil's independence comes quite differently from the ones we've looked at previously. Rather than being the result of an uprising or a revolutionary war, Brazil gains its independence through proclamation. In the early 1800s, when Napoleon was conquering Portugal, the Portuguese royal family made its escape to its colony in Brazil. After Napoleon's defeat, when the royal family was reinstated to its throne in Portugal, Prince Dom Pedro, who had essentially grown up in Brazil, decided to remain behind. And in 1822, he declared Brazil to be independent. His brother, who was King of Portugal, agreed, and that was it. Another concept we need to be familiar with is the Monroe Doctrine, which was produced in 1823, shortly after all these Latin American countries had gained their independence. Issued by American President James Monroe, the primary purpose was to recognize these new independent countries and also to discourage Europeans from coming to Latin or South America in an attempt to reestablish colonies. The Monroe Doctrine essentially gave warning to European nations that if they attempted further colonization in the Americas, that the United States would take it as a direct assault and would react accordingly. Pretty bold talk for a very young nation. Thank you for joining us as we reviewed the Latin American revolutions.